I've always just had a way of, no matter what life throws at me, taking like a minute just to think, okay, what are the positives that are going to come from this curveball? And how can I just redefine this seemingly negative thing that the world is throwing at me as, okay, it's a new opportunity. And it was funny because even in elementary school, when I first got diagnosed, I was talking with all of the kids in my elementary school, and I'm like, yeah, guys, I'm probably going to be in the Guinness Book of World Records because I'm the first kid to ever get treated for Wyburn-Mason Syndrome. And I just had a way of always just finding the positives and always being like, it makes me who I am.
I'm Casey Main, author, writer, and party girl turned spiritual junkie, and I'm dedicated to helping you better understand the most important and most complicated relationship you'll ever be in, the one you have with yourself. It's the only relationship that you're in for the entirety of your time here, and it affects every single aspect of your life. Yet it is the one most often overlooked. This podcast is here to help you explore that relationship, get to know yourself so you can accept yourself, heal yourself, and become a better version of yourself. So let's get to it. Hello, and welcome back to another episode of the Better You podcast. I am your host, Casey Main, and as always, I'm going to start this intro off by thanking you for being here. Thank you for tuning in and choosing to spend some time with me and the podcast. I guarantee you will not regret it. This will not be an episode that you bail on or turn off or whatever, because today's guest is honestly the most inspiring person I have ever encountered in my life. Like, she is just absolutely amazing. I feel like I just wish I could talk to her like every morning to just get me in the right mindset of positivity and determination, and just, she's amazing. You guys are going to love her. So we're going to just kind of jump into things here, but I do want to let you all know a little heads up on what we've got to come on the podcast. So I am planning, this is my plan right now. Granted, it might change, but I plan to take December off, and probably I'll still air episodes, but I'm thinking maybe I'll take those 4 weeks of December and air like the best of 2020, or maybe I'll include 2019 as well and just do like the best of the podcast so far, because I want to spend December really in planning mode for 2021. So as of right now, my plan for 2021 is to just be a little bit more organized in the different topics of the episodes that I do. Like, I want to have a certain cadence to them where I'm covering all aspects of relationship with self. So it'll probably be like a mind episode, then a body, then a spirit, then either a really inspiring story, or maybe a solo episode. So kind of get into just like a regular flow. And so that's going to take a little bit of a pause and some planning. But that is my plan for right now. That will continue to have new episodes through November. December will be a throwback to some of the best episodes so far. And then 2021 will just be absolutely amazing. And that will be the year that this podcast just totally takes off. Okay, so that's the plan. Hope everyone is on board with that. But as far as the kind of guests we have in the near future, so we're going to hear from Jacent Wamala, and we're going to talk about having a committed relationship with yourself. So this podcast is all about our relationship with ourselves, but what does it mean to really commit to yourself and put yourself first while still balancing everything else that we have going on in life? And that's something that I think at this particular phase of my life, it's something I really struggle with. So super excited to talk to her. We're also going to talk to Katina Mountanos. I hope I'm saying her last name right. And she has the really popular blog titled On Adulting. And so we're going to talk to her about navigating transitions. So navigating all the changes in our life, both big and small, which I think is particularly relevant for this year in general, but even just for what we've got ahead of us, with the election and what's happening with coronavirus, and are people returning to work, are children returning to school, are things still virtual? Just there's a lot of change on top of just whatever changes you might want to make in your specific life. And then we're also going to talk to another Casey. So she owns a yoga studio actually in Australia. So we're going to have an Australian guest on. I'm really excited about that. And we're going to discuss balance, especially in terms of being a mother and maintaining balance in your life. And I'm just kind of guessing, I don't know, but I kind of plan to have the title of that episode be Balance is Bullshit, because I kind of think that's maybe where this conversation is going to go. And then a lot more. We're going to have a really cool guest on to talk about the healing power of nature. And then I'm trying to book this guy who has this really interesting book on monogamy and kind of looks at the history of monogamy and almost like questions, can it work? Like, does it really actually work? So I think that could be a really interesting conversation. So that's a little bit of a heads up on what's to come. So if you are not subscribed, go ahead and whatever app you're listening to, take a second and hit that little subscribe button. So let's talk about today's guest, Sydney Collier. So it's kind of a random story of how her and I even connected. I wrote a review, like a product review article on Pop Sugar on these resistance band pants. The brand is called Agoji, and they're these really cool workout pants that have resistance bands built into them. So it just adds resistance to just all of your natural movements. So I tried them out and just like a normal workout that I did and thought they were amazing. So wrote a review on them for Pop Sugar, which then that connected me to the company, and we continued talking. And then I've continued to do some freelance writing for them outside of the Pop Sugar realm. And one of the things we've been working on is different customer testimonials, because they've got all these people who have had really cool experiences with the pants and then reach out to them. So I've been helping them craft those testimonials into copy that they can use in their marketing efforts and whatever. And so one of them is Sydney. So she found the pants, I think, just scrolling through Instagram, but they've been incredibly helpful for her because, as you'll hear, she has no feeling on the left side of her body. And she is a Paralympic athlete. So she spends a lot of time in the gym training to be able to do her sport. And these pants help to put like the same level of resistance on like her left leg as they do her right leg. So when I spoke to her about it, she had this great quote where she's like, it doesn't give my left leg any excuses to like slack off. It kind of has to build more muscle. And so that's how we first connected. And just talking to her about a pair of workout pants, I was like, oh, she's just amazing. So I asked her if she'd come on the podcast, and I'm so excited that she did, because she just has an incredible story. She is a beautiful spirit, and you guys are going to just love this episode. So we're going to go ahead and just jump into it. I'm going to fill you guys in on her bio and her story. So there's a little bit of a longer bio than we normally do, but I want you all to know more about her background and some stuff that we didn't necessarily discuss in the interview. Sydney Collier started riding horses at the age of 7 and instantly fell in love. Shortly after she began riding, a routine vision screening changed her life in ways she could not have imagined. She was diagnosed with the rare Wyburn-Mason Syndrome, a life-threatening condition that causes arteries and veins to grow together, causing vascular malformations, or AVMs, inside her brain. Because of their location deep in her brain, her AVMs could not be easily removed. The rarity of Wyburn-Mason Syndrome meant few options were available for treatment. Sydney's condition quickly started affecting her vision and the control on her left side. Over the course of 8 years, she endured a series of experimental treatments, including cyberknife radiation, blood vessel embolization, and brain surgery. During a risky brain surgery in 2009, she suffered a devastating and massive stroke. Despite this setback, she entered a rehabilitation center and was determined to get out of her wheelchair and return to the sport of riding. In 2010, she attended the World Equestrian Games as a spectator and immediately fell in love with paradressage. With a renewed dedication to returning to riding at a high-performance level, Sydney set out to learn the sport of paradressage. At the age of 16, she earned a spot on the U.S. Paradressage team and was the youngest competitor at the 2014 World Equestrian Games in France. At the age of 18, she won the 2016 U.S. Paradressage National Championships and became the youngest member in the equestrian portion of the 2016 Paralympics in Rio as part of Team USA. She placed 7th overall in the highly competitive Paradressage Grade 1B. She has dedicated her life to service and maintains a busy schedule combining athletic, equestrian training, guest speaking, volunteering, babysitting, and giving riding demonstrations at a variety of events. She is also attending DeVry University on an Olympic scholarship, majoring in communications. Alongside these activities, she continues training to earn a place on the 2021 Tokyo Paradressage team and help the USA stand on the medal podium. And in this episode, we discuss her story of being diagnosed at a young age with an extremely rare condition, the role horseback riding played in her determination to rehab after her surgeries, and the mental and emotional escape it provided from, as she says, all the medical mumbo jumbo. How finding paradressage changed her life and her plans for her future. The importance and power of setting big goals no matter what obstacles you have in your life. Reframing everything that life throws at you as a positive. How truly supporting people means not putting ceilings on them and even allowing them to fail. The importance of celebrating all the small goals along the way to the big goals. The incredibly special relationship she has with her horse and the power of the horse-human connection. The spiritual beliefs that help her maintain her positive mindset, and her advice on how we can all believe in ourselves a little bit more so we can go after our big goals. I want you guys to go ahead and mark your calendars. So I looked it up, and I think the dates for the paradressage portion of the 2021 Paralympics are set. I believe they're Thursday, August 26th through Monday, August 30th. So I'm not sure when exactly Sydney will perform in that. But as I say in this episode, and I mean it, like, we are going to have a podcast watch party. I don't know what format that will take from a technological standpoint. Maybe it's I think you can do like Facebook watch parties or whatever, but we're going to do something to watch her and support her. And I know after listening to this, you guys are going to just want to continue to watch and follow her journey. She's absolutely amazing. So we're just going to go ahead and jump into this conversation with Sydney. Enjoy. Okay, so if you want, you can go ahead and just jump into kind of sharing your story.
Okay, so I grew up totally able-bodied, and it was only by chance that my parents took me to an ophthalmologist when I was 7 years old because I was starting to lose my vision and not being able to see as well in the classroom. And the ophthalmologist took one look behind my right eye, and she turned sheet white. She said, "Oh my gosh, I never thought I would see a case of this in my entire life." I was all excited because I was there to get glasses, and I just wanted my fancy glasses at 7 years old. and my parents were like, what's going on? Had no inkling that anything was wrong with me up until this point. And the doctor basically said, "I don't know if I should send you straight to the hospital in an ambulance or if I should send you home and just tell you be happy with the time you've had thus far." And
wow.
ended up sending us to the hospital for an MRI to confirm her diagnosis that I had Wyburn-Mason Syndrome. And totally, I was 7 years old. All of this was going over my head. The whole time, I was just like, I really want my glasses. Give me my glasses.
When am I getting my glasses?
Yeah. This whole glasses thing is taking a really long time. So it had hit my parents by then, but hadn't hit me. And at the hospital where I actually got diagnosed, they told my parents take her home and pray that she doesn't die of a massive bleed, because my condition consists of tumors that are made up of blood vessels and capillaries and arteries, actually. And so they have really, really high blood flow and risk of bleed and death. And one's deep in the center of my brain. And so that hospital told my parents, we can't do anything for her. And my mom, not willing to take this as an answer, she said, no, I'm going to find a place that's willing to treat her, even though what she has is so rare that fewer than 100 people on Earth actually have it. And
Oh, wow.
And she spent like months just online reaching out to hospitals that had even seen one case of anything like what I have. And because I was a kid when I got diagnosed, that was a whole other thing, because most of the people that had been treated for anything even similar to what I had, they were adults. And so we actually ended up finding Stanford Medical Center, who agreed to take me on as an experimental case. And I ended up going down there for cyberknife radiation when I was 8, which was basically right after I lost the vision in my right eye. And then after 3 years it took to see if the radiation actually worked, we went back, and I was starting to basically lose more and more function on my left side. So the doctors decided at the age of 11 that it was time to go a more invasive route and to do a series of brain surgeries called embolizations. And during my first embolization, I actually ended up having a massive stroke, and woke up in a body that no longer felt like my own, couldn't move my left side at all, couldn't walk. I had to spend the whole summer in inpatient rehab trying to relearn how to walk and trying to relearn how to do anything with my left side. And throughout all of this, I was really lucky that horses had come into my life at the age of 7, right when I got diagnosed, because throughout all of the days when I had really, no idea what all of my medical treatments were going to result in, I could go and I could ride a horse, and I could just be one with the horse and do what I loved, do my passion, and forget about all of the medical mumbo jumbo. And really, that's what got me to be able to walk after my first stroke. I was pushing so hard in inpatient rehab because I wanted to get home to Michigan to be able to ride a horse again. I wasn't willing to take it as an answer to, no, you can't ride a horse again. I told him, no, I'm going to get on a horse again.
And so how old were you at this point?
At that point, I was 11 years old. And because I was so young and my brain was so resilient, I was able to rehab very well, to the point where I only had to wear a brace up to the bottom of my knee called an AFO, an ankle foot orthotic. And I was able to rehab back to like 95% use of my left hand and arm. So I was able to get back to riding and going to middle school with all of my friends. Of course, middle school looked a little bit different with my friends, and some of them who were not really my friends, like coming back and them not being willing to slow down for me when I couldn't run to catch up to them or couldn't do things the same way as them.
Yeah, like you were so young. So like I know you said when the initial diagnosis came and you're 7 and you kind of have no awareness of what's going on, you're like, I just want my glasses. As time went on, like over those next 4 years of your mom doing all the research and then you have the surgeries and you're rehabbing and now you're 11, like did you have a better understanding of what was going on, or like what was that like? What was that experience like in your head?
I did. I had a much better understanding of it, and it was kind of funny because I always really liked how unique it made me and how one of a kind I was with my diagnosis, even though I guess some people would think of it as a negative thing. I always framed it as, okay, this is me, this is who I am, and I really like that. And so
Okay.
and so
That right there is amazing. Like, were you always a very positive person? Because I feel like the majority of people wouldn't, it would take them decades to come around to that like positive viewpoint. Like, how did you do that?
yeah, I've always just had a way of, no matter what life throws at me, taking like a minute just to think, okay, what are the positives that are going to come from this curveball? And how can I just redefine this seemingly negative thing that the world is throwing at me as, okay, it's a new opportunity? And it was funny because even in elementary school, when I first got diagnosed, I was talking with all of the kids in my elementary school, and I'm like, yeah, guys, I'm probably going to be in the Guinness Book of World Records because I'm the first kid to ever get treated for Wyburn-Mason Syndrome. And I just had a way of always just finding the positives and always being like, it's just it makes me who I am in the end, and I was always like the kid spouting out the medical terminology, and adults would be just like standing there with their jaws gapped open, like, wow, I don't even know what half of those words are.
That's absolutely incredible. Like, that is so incredible and inspiring. People spend thousands upon thousands and thousands upon thousands of dollars in therapy and all this kind of self-work and personal development and all of this to get to that positive type mindset where you're able to just take what life throws at you, analyze it, find the positive, kind of throw away the rest. Like I don't know. That's just I'm like speechless.
Thank you. I would say that the most difficult part for me was coming home from my first stroke. And of course, I could ride, but I had to ride a lot differently. And then having friends who were just a lot different to me. Like, I didn't expect that because I didn't really see myself much differently. And thankfully, I had my parents who were always supportive of me, and they got me into a basically support group at my physical therapy with it was me and a bunch of 20-year-old guys just hanging around talking about life experiences, and I was 11 seeing these guys who were paralyzed from the neck down and were still like taking adaptive scuba diving lessons, taking like going out of their way to not let it stop them. And that was really when it clicked for me. Oh, okay, these guys have had these roadblocks in their way, and they're still persevering and making all of these really cool leaps and bounds no matter what has happened to them in their lives. And for me, seeing these older kids doing that at 11 was a really defining moment. And then after that, at the age of 12, getting to go and watch the World Equestrian Games go on with the paradressage in 2010 in Kentucky was really when it all clicked for me, because I grew up doing eventing, which, coming back from my stroke, was a lot to ask of my body, because it's jumping large immovable objects.
Mm-hmm.
and I feel like my parents probably worried about me a little bit with it.
Yeah.
I always had a great time.
So that's where the horse is going and jumping over the bales of hay, or I feel like I don't know a whole lot about the equestrian world, but I've seen stuff on like TV and movies and stuff. But that's where, yeah, it's like they're jumping over all kinds of stuff, right?
Yeah, like
Okay.
logs, like gigantic logs with huge spreads. And my original goal from the age of 7 was to make it onto the team for the Olympics in eventing. So I never set small goals at all.
Yeah. Which is another amazing thing, but I love it.
Thank you. And so coming back from my first stroke, I was a little bit discouraged, because I had to totally relearn how to ride and how to jump and how to do everything, how to take care of my horse. And obviously all that is all good, because as long as I'm around a horse, I'm happy. And then
Hmm.
going to the World Equestrian Games, I saw para dressage go on for the first time in my life. And I had this moment that was, I describe it as literally something like out of a movie, like an epiphany, where I'm watching these riders who are just so talented, and you just see them working in so much harmony with the horse, and you're not even paying attention to their disability. You're paying attention to what they're putting out there in their dressage tests. And it was then that I really realized, wow, if they're doing that, I can do that too. And then I set my goals on representing the USA in the next World Equestrian Games and the next Paralympics. I said, that's going to be me. And at that point, I was 12 years old.
So for those who aren't familiar with it, what is dressage?
Dressage is, a lot of people describe it like ballet with horses, or it's like ice skating with horses, because you have a set pattern that you have to ride through, and you get judged on how the horse moves, and how, in traditional dressage, how the rider's body is affecting the horse, and how the rider, how their position is and everything.
Hmm.
And in para dressage, we get judged on how the horse looks rather than how we're accomplishing that with our bodies. And the para actually stands for parallel to able-bodied dressage and able-bodied sport.
Oh,
And we have adaptive aids that help us ride parallel to able-bodied dressage. And it finding it was the best thing that ever happened in my life.
okay. So take us to like the first time you then attempted to do it, because that wasn't your prior experience with horses. Like you were doing the eventing. So
Yeah.
now you're trying to learn a new skill, which I imagine, and I might be wrong on this, but like I imagine that takes even more finesse, because now you're not just trying to get the horse to jump over big stuff. It's like the little movements, which all comes down to like how you're moving, like little movements you're doing, like squeezing your thighs and that kind of stuff. Is that correct?
That is totally correct. And it's interesting because eventing is made of 3 phases, and they have a dressage phase as well. But for me growing up, the dressage phase was always, oh, we make it through to go to the fun stuff and jump. And then finding paradressage in after the World Equestrian Games and meeting my friend and mentor Jonathan Wentz, who really introduced me even deeper to the sport and said, you really should pursue this because we need more kids in the sport. And immediately I went home and and I told my trainer, hey, so this is going to be totally different, but we're going to try it on my little pony at the time. And so I tried it for the first time, and it was a little bit frustrating for me because I didn't have the right quality horse or a very understanding pony of my left side.
Yeah.
So I definitely fell in love with the new connection I felt with him immediately trying to even do dressage. And then we realized, okay, we need at least a horse that can do the national level shows and then work up from there. And we were lucky enough to find my first paint horse who actually did the national shows with me while I was catch riding horses all throughout the country the first year that I was doing paradressage. And at the time, catch riding was where you basically went to shows and rode whatever horse was there,
Oh,
whatever
wow.
horse was offered to you. And so I would show horses, like very talented horses that I had maybe 3 hours total practice on. Like once
Yeah, I was
I
going to say, like, that's got to be difficult because I would imagine a lot of this comes down to your relationship with the horse and the horse understanding the way you move and what you want out of them. So trying a new horse every time, like that's like an added layer of difficult.
Yeah, it was a great start though for me in paradressage because even though I had not much practice with the horses before stepping into the dressage ring, it taught me how to be just crazy adaptive to every
Mm,
single possible situation no matter what, and no matter what that horse's personality was. And I got to sit on horses that I never would have had the opportunity to previously to that. And it unfortunately you can't catch ride nowadays. So I feel really lucky to have had the start in paradressage when I did, and to have ridden all of the horses that I've ridden up to this point. And thankful to the horse owners, obviously, for letting me have that show experience with their horses because it taught
mhm.
me a lot, and it taught me how to roll with the punches. It shows.
Mhm. Yeah. Okay, so what was your or when was your first like major competition?
My first major competition was actually when I made it on to the team in 2014 for the World Equestrian Games in Normandy, like I set my goal for. And and it was it was a crazy qualifying year because my own horse Wentworth, he went lame right before the biggest qualifying competition, and I ended up borrowing a horse at the barn in New York where I was training at the time, and then also borrowing a horse from Texas. So I would train in New York and then fly to Texas, train in Texas, and fly back and forth to get training in on both. And then at selection trials, the horse in Texas actually was selected for the team with me. And we ended up competing at the World Equestrian Games with altogether about 2 months total training together, which is absolutely insane because that was my first 5-star event, and that's the same level as, like, the same caliber is the Paralympics, and I was 16 at the time.
Wow. Okay. So you're right, though. Then your experience of having to be adaptable to all of these different horses, I mean, that if you don't believe everything happens for a reason, like that's proof it does right there, because then I'm sure that was beyond helpful for qualifying for the team on a horse you barely knew.
Oh yeah, it totally prepared me. It's crazy how my life has worked to really show me that everything happens for a reason, and to roll with it and always keep a smile on your face. And in the World Equestrian Games was absolutely the most just surreal, most incredible experience in my life, and I got to ride such a talented horse there. His name was Willie Wesley, and I was actually the youngest competitor in the whole World Equestrian Games, and it was so insane riding down center line at my first 5-star competition with him.
So when you first started telling people what your goals were, like that your goals were to compete in those world games and then go on to the Olympics, what was people's typical reaction?
See, it's funny because the first people that I really told were my family, and they never acted like I was crazy or anything. They said, "Okay, we'll do everything to support you in this goal, and we'll do everything to make this happen." And my friends also were very supportive. They never treated it as if, oh, there's no way that could ever happen. And really, with my story, that's something that I really want to show people, is that no matter what happens in your life, any goal is possible as long as you work hard enough for it. No matter what the twists and turns are on the way, it's really possible. And especially for parents raising kids who might be different from the norm, don't be afraid to let them have goals, and let them set their goals large, and let them work towards it without the fear of failure, and let them adapt however they need to on the way to that goal. That's something I really want to put forward with my story.
I love that. And I think that's such a great point because I think we're not always as supportive of other people as we could be, and we think we do it for good intentions. So whether you're a parent and it's towards your children or it's towards your friend, but it's exactly what you just said. It's that fear of that other person being disappointed or failing and being hurt, and so we think we're protecting them, but in reality we're not giving them the support and the belief to like really lift them up. And I think that's seen all over the place, but I would imagine, especially with people who have disabilities, that people are immediately assuming, you've got this ceiling of what you can accomplish. And so I think that's a really excellent point to not put that ceiling on anybody.
Yeah, that's the thing, is that a disability and the limitation is only what you set yourself and what the people around you tell you it is. So if every day you wake up and you say, I want to make it onto the Olympic team or the Paralympic team, and you tell yourself it is possible, then you're going to seek out the opportunities to make it possible. And that's the big thing, is that you got to always reframe things in this positive manner. And it's really effective to not be afraid of letting the people around you uh, fail, for for lack of better words, and not being afraid to let them have that uncomfortable, even mental feeling of not being successful at first. Because if you want something bad enough, you're going to make it happen. And all of that path along the way is just going to make you stronger and even better for it. And so we really have to be careful of not limiting ourselves and other people through our mindset, because anything really is possible if you want it enough.
I totally agree. And that brings up like a really good point of that, like, we define ourselves, and too often we allow other people or circumstances or physical abilities or whatever it may be define who we are and what we can do. But I mean, you are proof that like the human spirit and everything you're saying is like the human spirit, like we're more than all those things, and we can be whatever we want to be. But you do have to put in the work, and you've got to want it, and you've got to, be diligent about doing the work, but like it is possible.
Yeah, that's the whole thing, and that's what I want to inspire others towards. We just need to not be afraid to set these goals and not be afraid to set them large. And then all of the little goals on the way, not be afraid to celebrate those, because no matter how small the goal is, it's still an accomplishment. And that's
Mm-hmm.
what people don't see that a lot of times. If it's not, say, the Paralympics or the Olympics or some really, really large goal that they've set, there are all of these mini goals along the way that are really large. Like, even stepping a foot into the gym, that's a goal. Even accomplishing an exercise, bettering the exercise, even like for me on a horse, making one shape in my dressage test bigger per week, like that's an accomplishment. No matter how
Mm-hmm.
small the goal seems, it's still important and it's still an accomplishment, which is a thing not to forget either.
For sure. Are you able to kind of maintain that mindset and that awareness consistently, or do you ever like lose sight of that and kind of get into a negative headspace of, oh my gosh, this is too much for me, like who do I think I am to do this, and all that like imposter syndrome that so many of us battle?
I'd say that I have a pretty good handle on it, and I'd say especially my time in the gym and my time on the horse gives me a really good understanding of where I am at any point in time. I would say definitely during quarantine and shutdown with no competitions during the beginning of the summer, it was more difficult to train at some points without shows to really know, okay, here's how I'm doing in the judge's eyes. I know what I'm doing in my trainer's eyes and I trust her implicitly. But sometimes as people, we're so focused on the concrete things like scores or places or rankings. And that's where we have to, especially nowadays, embrace the abstract in our training and embrace the little wins, which is
Mm-hmm.
something that I'm learning to do more and more, especially with COVID-19, and working on not discounting these little wins by, say, writing down what I did well in a ride, what I need to work on in a ride, and then evaluating that week to week or day to day. And and that's been really helpful to me.
Yeah, because now you're preparing for, I guess now it's the 2021 Paralympics.
Yeah. So basically we've been qualifying, and we had just finished our season in Wellington, Florida when COVID-19 started, and we had finished our qualifying competitions down there. And our next step was to go to Europe and compete and get more scores, get even better qualified, even more experience, and then come home. And this past June would have been our selection trials. And obviously, Europe didn't happen because there was no traveling,
Mm-hmm.
and the games got delayed, and so our selection trials ended up getting pushed to this coming June, and we're still working on qualifying. I've done two national competitions this late summer, and then I have our national competition and CPDI coming up in October, which I'm really looking forward to competing in Tryon, North Carolina. And then our next big competitions after that are in Wellington, Florida in January and February. Those are qualifiers. And then after that, we have our selection trials in June of 2021 for the team.
Oh, okay. So it's the home stretch.
Yeah, that but it's funny because that's what we thought last winter.
Yeah.
We're like, okay,
It's the home stretch again.
yeah. So it's been a lot of athletes have had this thing where, like, okay, we're in the home stretch, we're going towards selection, we're gonna make it, we're gonna do it, and we're gonna be over there in a couple months, which is crazy. And then all of a sudden we're like, okay, reset the clock.
Yeah.
And and honestly, for me, I'm choosing to look at it as, okay, it's a positive. I can get even more fit. I can get Ale even more fit, and we have even more time to train and perfect things. And I'm really lucky to be where I am, where I'm training and actually living at the barn. So it's very, very nice to be able to ride and work out every day, and I feel even more invigorated.
Are you going to school while you're doing all of this? Like, are you also juggling school?
I am actually.
Jeez.
Back in 2017, I was lucky enough to receive a full scholarship to DeVry University through the United States Olympic Committee. And I'm getting my degree in communications, thankfully all online. So I was ahead of the curve
Hmm.
when schools moved to online. I was like, oh, I've got this. and it's been, I'm on my last year now, so I'm pretty excited about that.
Congratulations. That's awesome.
I have to say, I did my last 2 years of high school all online, and then now doing DeVry online. It's crazy how well set up the classes are, and I love my professors, and I just feel so lucky for the opportunity to be able to go to college, because basically after the Rio Paralympics, I had no idea how I was going to afford school after my family had invested so much in me making the team and accomplishing my riding goals. And I said, okay, got to get serious about school. And I found the ACE program, which is the Athlete Career Education Program through the United States Olympic Committee, and I got so lucky to get this scholarship, and I'm really, really enjoying it.
That's amazing. I want to ask you a little bit about your relationship with your current horse, because
Hmm.
actually, in a couple weeks, I'm interviewing a woman who does like equine therapy, and so she's a psychologist, and she's all about the horse human connection and like how they can help us with like so much healing. So I'm
Oh
just
yeah.
curious if your relationship with your horse is purely on a physical training level, or like what is that relationship like?
That relationship transcends any relationship in the entire world, honestly. It's I'd like to say it's like a dance partner because we have to both tap into each other to accomplish these things. And we have to communicate silently in, like you said, all of these minute, just super finesse, excuse me, ways to accomplish the things we do in the show ring. And a lot of it is geometry. And because I'm three-fourths blind in my left eye and then blind in my right eye, I actually count out loud some of my steps, and he helps me with that because he has such a steady tempo in walk. And for me, with my body, it's fascinating to see what a difference the horse's movement makes in me, because if I don't ride, I am so much more tense on my left side
Mhm.
and so much tighter from my muscle tone from my 5 strokes over the years. And I really have to say that our relationship, it's like teamwork and it's like freedom for me, because when I'm riding him, nothing else matters, and he doesn't care that I ride one-handed and that only one of my legs works to cue him. And actually it's pretty neat because I so since I only ride one-handed and only one of my legs works, I have a whip that curves over my left leg to give him the cues of my left leg, and I am able to use voice commands with him too. So he's very tuned into my body and to what I'm telling him. And it's so special to see, and to see our connection, especially when I'm watching videos of us working together. Actually, at the most recent competition that we were at, the last day of the competition, I almost broke out into tears because it was just the most connected that I've ever felt to any horse. I just felt completely at peace and in the moment, and happy with what he and I were doing in each moment of the dressage test. And that's something that I hope to convey also with my story, is the need for this human horse relationship, because I think in Europe they're way ahead of the US in knowing that horses, they have this aura about them of healing and of just pure calm and
Mhm.
kindness. And so many people need that in their lives, whether they be disabled or not disabled and able-bodied, just leading a hectic life. It is so important, and it needs to be utilized way more here in the US.
I completely agree. And I think, when you think about it on like the most basic level, it makes sense. We are energetic beings, as are all animals, all of life. And so we give off an energy, a vibe, people often call it. And so we're constantly affecting each other. And I think sometimes we get all kind of just stuck in focusing on ourselves and trying to work it all out ourselves, and maybe not utilizing some of these other just naturally calming forces that exist in this life. So whether it be horses or spending time out in nature, but I mean, they can be such healing elements. And I agree with you that I think especially here in the US, we're not really tapped into and taking advantage of that.
Yeah, we're always on the run and always on the go, and I have to say horses, they're the reason why I am where I am nowadays. And after after the Paralympics in 2016, when I had my fifth stroke, I woke up and I had had a really, really tough ride the day before, and I go to take a step out of my bed because at this point I could walk. It was not the most coordinated, but at least I could walk and my left leg would move for me. And I go to take a step, and all of a sudden my left leg just isn't coming. So I'm dragging around my left leg. I'm like, huh, this is weird. End up in the hospital, and I'm like, this is very, very strange. And that stroke actually knocked out all of my ability to feel any of my left side, and basically how to walk on my left leg. And with enough rehab, and I credit riding to it, I've been able to walk with assistance, with my assistance dog, not long distances, but a couple of steps at least. And the horses are really what made that possible for me, because no matter the hardest day, they kept me striving to be better and better.
Yeah, it's like that constant even reminder of what your goals are and that they're bigger than this one day and this one setback.
Definitely, definitely. And the horses movement, it's crazy what it does for your body, because it's so relaxing, and yet so such an intense workout at the same time, which is, you would think it would be opposite. Like, if it's such an intense workout, how can it be relaxing? But it's the repetition of it. And for me, it's always been the best form of physical therapy, because it's not like being in an office and doing exercises over and over and over and really, really focusing on it. I can just
Hmm.
be on a horse and having fun doing what I love, and my body is automatically getting that helpful movement and engaging things that I don't even realize it's engaging, which is so cool and so
Yeah.
nice.
So, will you always be at risk for additional strokes, or has there been or is there treatment options to eliminate or mitigate that risk?
So, as of right now, that's a good question, I'd say. They Because I'm the first pediatric case to ever get treated for Wyburn-Mason in the way that I did, they don't really know how I'm gonna turn out and how physically I'm gonna turn out, I'd say. So really there's a chance that I could just continue having strokes and losing more and more movement, or losing more and more vision. So I live every day as at its fullest, and I'm like, whatever tomorrow brings, we'll go with it. And whatever challenge my body wants to throw at me, I'll answer it with, okay, what's next?
Wow. Are you, and we don't have to go down this road if you don't want to, but are you a religious or spiritual person? Like, is there a higher level that's kind of helping you keep that incredible mindset?
That's a really good question. I would say I'm definitely spiritual in a sense. I had a time in my life where I was very into Zen Buddhism, and I would
Mm.
say that I align well with that way of thinking. And I definitely believe that everything happens in a way that it's meant to be. Whether that means that there's a God that's making that happen, or just a force that's making that happen. I don't think
Mhm.
I've figured that out exactly. but but I'm
I don't think
definitely
anyone has.
right. I'd say I'm definitely spiritual in a sense, and my life has definitely made me believe that. Obviously not in the moment, but looking back on it, I'm like, oh, it's like the butterfly effect for sure.
hmm So are there things that you do throughout your day that like so you mentioned you were into Zen Buddhism for a while, so like were you meditating? Do you still meditate? Like do you have little kind of spiritual practices, whether it be, I imagine riding on the horse is one of them. That's going to be a guess, but you know,
Hmm.
like sitting outside or is working out even kind of a spiritual experience for you? Like what helps connect you to that force or God or whatever it is?
Yeah, I love guided meditations. I'm trying to get even more, like even better and more uh, disciplined about my practice, I'd say, because some days with school and writing, it kind of falls to the wayside. But it's definitely something that I'm into, and when I finish a meditation, I just feel so much more invigorated and more ready for my day, which if you can imagine me feeling even more invigorated, it's a
Yeah.
good feeling. and and then I also do every night I do like sleep meditations because I notoriously am awful at falling asleep because I have all of that leftover just excitement and energy from the day still at night.
Yeah. Yeah, well, I hear you on the trying to be more disciplined. I think that's something probably everyone who listens to this podcast is dealing with as well, because I'm with you. Like I feel so much better when I do it, when I meditate, and especially when I meditate consistently. But for whatever reason, I still struggle to like make that a priority and fit it in no matter what else is going on throughout the day.
Right? That's the whole thing. And I what I especially love is when I'm at home and doing a home workout is doing a meditation right after I work out. That's the best.
Yeah. Oh, that's a good idea. Doing it right after a workout. Okay, well, I want to close out with just getting your thoughts or advice for people who struggle with the kind of like the less than attitude. Like I can't do this because of whatever reason. Like they have things they want to do. Maybe it's as big as a goal of being in the Paralympics, or maybe it's just a matter of I want to start working out regularly or I want to start meditating regularly. Like how how do we overcome kind of those mindset barriers and those obstacles that we create and actually do and go after the things that we want to do, like you have so successfully done?
Thank you. And first you've got to just take that, oh, I can't do that, and throw that out the door. Just ignore that. Just tomorrow when you wake up, you just wake up and you tell yourself, whatever goal you want, you tell yourself, I can do this. And you then do that for a few days. And after you've done that, you will start believing it. And then once you start believing it, you find the smaller little goals that are achievable at that point. And you find a way to make those happen, whether it be going online, finding a connection that you can reach out to that might be able to find you resources in your city to make this happen, or finding a gym to work out in. Like there are so many options, and you reach out and you put this positive energy out into the universe, and then and then you wait. And then once you find the right place for you, you go. And you don't go in thinking, oh, I can't do this. You go in with your new mindset of, I know I can do this because I believe it. And as long as you believe it, no matter what the people around you are telling you, if they're not supportive, you believe in yourself, and they'll start believing you too if you're serious enough about it. And really, that's the big thing.
I love that. I love that because it's like it's taking the goal, but then kind of like we were talking about earlier, celebrating the small steps on the way to that goal to kind of build and like keep that positive energy and that like belief, like it momentum moving forward.
Yeah, and the whole thing is you have to be your own biggest cheerleader and your own biggest support, because people aren't always going to believe in you. They might think that you're crazy for having these big goals, but no matter what happens, as long as you believe it, it's accomplishable. And you can do it. Like, and that's what I want people to take away from my story is this little girl from Ann Arbor, Michigan, who's had 5 strokes, is pretty darn blind, and has taken all of these factors and made them into something that I can work with, and made it onto the teams, and now working towards Tokyo 2020 +1, and hoping to bring home the gold with the U.S. Paralympic team. That's the big thing, is I want them to see that anything is possible, really.
Oh, I love that. Like I have goosebumps. I cannot thank you enough for coming on and sharing your story. You're just so genuine and so unbelievably positive, and like it's all so inspiring. I'm telling you right now, we are going to have a podcast watch party to watch you in the 2021 Tokyo Paralympics. Like it's happening. I'm putting it out there so you can count on and me and hopefully everybody listening. We're all cheering you on. Like I cannot wait to continue to follow your journey and see everything that you accomplish. Tell everybody where they can find you online or follow you or kind of just stay in touch with your journey.
If you look up my website, www.sidsparaquest.com, then you can find my links to my social media and all the other information about my journey on there. And thank you so much for having me on the podcast.
Oh, thank you. I absolutely love chatting with you.
It's been so fun.
All right, that is it for this week. Again, thank you so much for listening. Make sure you are subscribed so you don't miss all of the amazing conversations we've got coming up on the show. And definitely come follow us on the socials. We are on Facebook and Instagram at The Better You Podcast. And if you have feedback for me, you can always reach me at thebetteryouPodcast@gmail.com. And if you're enjoying the show, if you liked this conversation, then please take a minute to leave a rating and review. That helps a lot in the podcasting world, and it means a lot to me. So that is it. Thank you again, and I hope you all have a wonderful rest of your day and a fantastic week.